Welcome back to the podcast. We're excited to talk about the buzz phrase, road to rail.
That's right. For those of you joining me for the first time, I'm Leanne Couvasier. I'll be the co-host for today's podcast, and I'm very excited about someone that's bringing a great change in the road to rail space.
Warwick, we're thrilled to have you here. Welcome to Beyond the Fleet.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
When did this inland port idea start?
So it started before I got involved in the project, and the inland port at Cato Ridge, or logistics hub or freight village, was discussed for some time, and Transnet and the KZN government had both identified that Cato Ridge was required in order to alleviate some of the congestion at the port and act as a logistics hub. It's been an interesting journey, been around for 30 or 40 years as a concept, and for the last 12 years, I've been involved with it and really trying to bring it to operation.
So where did it start? Did it start with the private sector wanting this, or did it start with Transnet?
Started with Transnet identifying that if they were going to get up to the volumes that they required through the Durban port, and if you remember the sort of demand volume that they put out quite a few years ago, was saying that the port's volumes was going to go up from the 2, 3, 4 million up to 14 million. And if you wanted that, then the port was going to be the constraint. And so you had to have a systematic way to clear the port in order to allow more cargo there through. So it started by Transnet. It would seem to be adopted very much by both provincial, national, and municipal governments. However, adopting something and agreeing that it's a good plan doesn't really move the needle forward, unfortunately.
Correct. It has been in the making for the past 30 years. What are the timelines going ahead? Do you guys have a bit of an idea of the process going forward?
So we do, but it's very opaque. It depends on take-up. It depends on the speed of the rail reform. If you think about what we're trying to create in that space is roughly, sort of 50 to 60% of what you currently see in the Durban port. You can imagine how long that precinct has taken to build out to where it is now. And if you want to replicate half of that, there is a period to do it. The timing is very dependent on government's policies are implemented effectively and efficiently to ensure that this rail to road strategy is implementable.
We've all heard, and what you also just said about the incredible pressure that the Durban port are experiencing. What do you expect the outcome to be when a transporter uses Cato Ridge Inland Port?
So the whole purpose of an inland port, and specifically what we're doing at Cato Ridge, is to make the logistic experience more seamless, i.e. to take away the bottlenecks or the pinch points. And what's currently happening is the pinch point is the Durban port to try and get in their truck booking system, collect your container and get out in a economically plausible time is not currently happening by and large in the Durban port. So what we're looking to do is mass evacuate the Durban port of containers specifically at this stage to Cato Ridge specifically for Gauteng bound traffic. So a cargo owner who wants his cargo in Gauteng would then send a truck down to Cato Ridge at this stage to collect his goods, which means he doesn't have to go into the CBD, which is congested, into the Durban port area, which is congested, and then have to deal with the booking system. Currently, he would be able to collect his goods and turn around straight away. The geographical benefit that we have at Cato Ridge is currently with the drive times of truck drivers to get down to the Durban port, collect your goods, even if you collect it instantaneously. So as you arrive in the Durban port area, your container's magically on your truck. You still cannot turn around and get back up to Joburg in one day. However, Cato Ridge, you'd be able to get down to Cato Ridge, collect your good and return the same day, which means your truck and trailer then sleeps at home. Your driver sleeps at home. And in my view, that's significantly a better outcome because you're looking after family units. You don't have the risk of the assets on the road or in a truck stop or staging area. And so we start having a better systematic design to the whole supply chain. If I can just elaborate a little bit in the fact that the problem that we have at the moment, in my view, is that the supply chain is geared up and orchestrated or designed in order to have, originally when we started, i.e. one ship arrives, one container comes off, one truck goes and fetches. And that's great. So if we have a fire in the building that you're in, for you to run out the door is very easy. You now put 1,000 people, or let's say 100 people in the room with you. You now have a fire in the room and you all try exit the door at exactly the same time. No one gets out. The way it's operating at the moment is everyone's trying to get out the same door at the same time. Instead, if you have the same fire and you've got 7 doors in the building and you know exactly which door you should go to, you're at 1 or 3 or 5 or 7, As soon as there's a fire, you'd immediately run to that door and you'd be evacuating because there's 10 of you going out at a time, which is significantly better than 100. So what we are advocates for as inland ports is to bring back the systematic nature to the supply chain. Understanding what's best for the individual cargo is not necessarily best for all the cargo and the free flow.
What is the full scope of the development at Cato Ridge?
I came down to Cato Ridge project as a property developer. And so what we found is that instead of putting the development into a property development model, we needed to change that and put it into a sort of logistics model. And the logistics model says that, well, you're not all things to all people. So what we are trying to do, instead of developing and building for all of our clients to now populate the area, we are saying what we need is we need cargo volumes in the area so that we can densify cargo and then move it more effectively. And in order to do that, we need all of you, or as many people as possible and companies, to come and invest, come and row your own boat, bring your cargo and really drive your own agenda instead of being under the sort of developer's umbrella per se. And what that does is it allows it to be what we are doing, and to use a body example, is we're doing the backbone of the body. And what we're asking clients, or not even necessarily clients, but people in establishing Cato Ridge, come and put your arm onto it. You know, if it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger arm and wants to be really strong, great. If it's a surgeon's arm, come and put that onto our logistics backbone. And so when you say, what does it entail? At the very core, it entails a train and truck interface, which is normally the rail terminal, where we handle the containers off on train and onto a truck or onto the ground. We then have a container depot, which needs to coordinate container flow, and then you have a truck stop or staging. So at the very core, you need to triangulate three things. Camera's a little bit weird. Triangulate three things, and those are containers, trucks, and train. And if you can triangulate those, you get a good outcome for your supply chain. So at the very core, that is what's required for an inland port. And now when you have that enabling environment, the reason why I'm excited, or the reason why I originally came down to the project, is I would like to do the logistics assets, so to be the landlord around this sort of hub or core, because clients now want to create or be next to, for the same reason as someone would want to be in the Durban port area, to make their logistics more efficient and effective and hopefully get onto the ships quicker. Exactly the same rationale would be for setting up in the Cato Ridge Inland Port area in order to make use of this rail backbone straight into the port and make use of this extended gate. What we are not looking to do is say, this is how big the project is. We're saying we're doing the backbone. Let's see how big the industry and the market can bring in the various investments. And very excited to give you an example of this is Maersk have decided to build a massive cold store facility in Cato Ridge. It's now complete and operational, right on our rail terminal, right next to our rail terminal, so that they can then take advantage of the rail flows.
There are hurdles to this road to rail change. What would the benefits be to the transporter? Why would they want to combat this barrier of change, Warwick?
Okay, good. And when you say transporter, you mean trucker?
Yes.
Okay, 100%. So change is inevitable. If this change is coming, how then do I have to trim my sails or change my operational methodology to have the best outcome for me and my business based on this change? Now, what we have done, unfortunately, in our supply chain in South Africa is we've had an over-reliance on trucking, because trucking has been efficient, effective, it's worked, it's done its job. And so what's happened is the cargo has moved on to that. Now, this is not ideal for a South African Inc. perspective, because what you're doing is you're having unintended consequences on extra road costs, congestion costs, and a whole bunch of accident costs and a whole bunch of other costs that aren't necessarily held by the trucker itself. So our system at the moment is geared up in that it's rewarding bad behavior and penalizing good behavior. And so we need to change that. And I'm happy to at least be part of a little bit of that change. So with this changing environment, rail needs to perform the backbone function that I spoke about a little bit earlier. So in my view, and especially for heavier products and products that move on a regular basis, you shouldn't be moving trucks between Gauteng and Durban Port. You should be allowing train to do that backbone. And if you're currently on that long haul route and you're a truck owning company or truck owning company, the sort of my advice would be, guys, every single train journey requires 2 truck journeys, one on either side. A train never does the last mile delivery to wherever. And so you now have an opportunity to rejig your thinking in order to be a fulfillment cargo delivery, and you then do that from the various terminals. So if you then wanted to regear yourself, and let's say you Gauteng bound, you really interact with the inland port in City Deep and the other ones that are currently being planned, and see how you can be their last mile delivery. And then you've got your truck running 3 or 4 times a day, doing the shuttle loop to the various clients, and then still sleeping at home. So it's a little bit more complex in that you've got more work to do instead of pick up at point A, drive right the way down to Durban and deliver at point B. However, that comes with risk, your truck being away, etc., etc. So that would be my suggestion: is have a look at the direction that we're heading in, and see how you can rejig your operations in order to make the most of it. The 2025 RFA convention, we got asked to speak there, and out of the sort of 4 or 6 speakers, 60% of them were rail speakers at a Road Freight Association conference. And the discussion was to highlight what is happening and the huge advantages and benefits that the trucking fraternity can then plug into. So change is always scary, but it's not necessarily bad, especially if it leads to better outcomes for SA Inc. If you can then get your own returns or your own model working better, that would be ideal. So it's basically doing that last 0 to 200 kilometers radius in and around from the sort of central hubs or the inland ports or the port itself. And if you can get that model working well, I believe you'll have significantly better wear and tear on your assets, better outcomes for your driver sleeping at home with his family as opposed to on the streets, and hopefully less insurance costs for your actual vehicle as well.
I think one of the big things I'm picking up, the road to rail goal is not to replace road. Like you say, the first and final leg will always be road. So it's to work in conjunction with the transporters and the truckers to make road more efficient and more easy on the assets, easier on the driver. So the first and final mile will always be road transport. But the middle section is just there to kind of assist and be that bridge. So with regards to that, how is the cargo going to be protected? How can the transporter feel safe in order to give that mile to you guys?
Okay, when you say safe, do I understand that is the cargo going to arrive where it's supposed to? Is that the safe concept?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, 100%. So at the moment, what we have is we have a rail system that's not working as effectively, as efficiently as it should. Now, my view is very simple. We are experiencing bad outcomes on the security of the line because we are not utilizing it enough. It is very hard to be able to steal any bits of rail when there's a train coming past every 10 minutes. As we now start coming into the wonderful space of private train operating companies now coming into play, one of the big concerns and the risks that needed to be addressed was exactly the state of this infrastructure, i.e., the road, because we know what the road is like, but the rail needs to be able to handle trains and wagons at volume in order to get your returns. Because imagine you understand the trucking fraternity. If the wheels ain't turning, we ain't earning. It's exactly the same for rail. And if you can't move because there's no road, because the rail's not there, that becomes very difficult. So this is one of the real issues that is being addressed at the very highest level, because the investment that's now required in order to bring in private sector wagons and locos is huge investment that needs to be paid off over sort of 15 to 25 years, which needs certainty. And having rail working on a periodic basis or not as it should do really harms that sort of modeling. And what we're all doing is modeling financial returns based on how often can you move the train. And so the comfort that I can give to your listeners is the fact that the train operating companies that are now coming to the fore are not going to be doing the service or committing to this huge expenditure until they are certain that they will be able to retrieve that expenditure by running trains on the line. So I hope it just shows that there's goal alignment. There will be difficulty, there will be teething problems. Nothing happens perfectly from the beginning. But as far as a big picture goes, I believe we're very much on the right direction. And I also just believe for your listeners that we've now crossed the Rubicon. It's harder now to go back to where we were than to complete this journey to where we're going. And once you reach that point, it's a bit like you've gone past halfway. You don't turn around and run home now. You might as well keep going and get to your destination.
Yes.
Already done the work. Let's at least try it.
Yes.
Warwick, can Can companies integrate services such as warehousing, logistics tracking, or software solutions?
Totally. So what we're looking to do, and an interesting thing is, one entity can do it, but what we have found is that if you can get the collaboration working amongst maybe the different drivers or the different asset owners or operators, you start getting these good outcomes. What we're looking to do very especially at Cato Ridge Inland Port is to try and create a whale warehouse linked rail linked warehouses, which means that we can then start getting super efficient outcomes, but these need to be done on scale. And so it would be very difficult for, let's say, I would like to put up a 10,000 square meter warehouse and I'd like to get some rail in. And if you're having that sort of discussion, no, the opportunity is not there. Rail works big, macro, and if you've got serious volumes to do so, our discussions are we're going to put up a 30 to 40,000 square meter warehouse with a rail siding on the side, which then allows us to take containers directly off the rail and then unpack inside a warehouse, or alternatively have a bonded store in there and be able to do it. So unfortunately, rail is very capital intensive, and if you start wanting to link wagons to, not wagons, sorry, warehouses to it and other areas to it, it needs to be done on a macro scale. What we are trying to do is exactly that. And then if when we get that right, you're able to plug into it on a smaller scale, i.e., we know what the big picture is. We can then put up our warehouse that feeds off the system. Once again, I keep talking about the backbone. It would work well. Then you mentioned digital. Now, digital is critical as we start, because information and being able to plan around real data, not theoretical data, or we might get this, we might get that, starts enabling us to be a lot more efficient with resource allocation and therefore cost. If we know that 10 trucks are arriving, we can put one reach stacker there in order to address it. If we know 1,000 trucks are arriving, well, we need a whole bunch more than that, and we better get the machinery there in order to do the job before the trucks arrive. And then, oopsie, now let's do it. So we can run a lot more things in parallel. Once again, a roundabout answer, but I think it's important that your listeners and yourselves understand the sort of context that we're working in, and it must be appreciated that we have never seen what we are currently seeing. I have never seen the sort of huge fundamental change in the way the supply chain is operating and the abilities that this creates. I mean, if you think about it, if you had said privatization 3 years ago in government circles, it would have been considered a swear word. Now we have just gone through the legal process, and Pier 2 is now awarded to ICTSR, and we are now embarking on privatization in a meaningful way. I mean, wow, the land has changed, that we were playing on before.
Yeah, and so quickly. I mean, but actually, first time I actually heard of this, and when it started becoming a buzzword, was at the start of this year, wasn't it? When Transnet says, "Okay, we're opening up for the private sector." Why did it happen now?
I think that we have a National Logistics Crisis Committee was created and has been running for 2 years, maybe 3 years now. In order for human nature to be jolted out of its what I did yesterday is what I'm going to do today, you need a crisis. And the old adage in business is don't let a good crisis go to waste, which means that when you have a difficult period in a crisis, people are prepared and companies are prepared to make those tough trade-offs, those tough decisions to get a better outcome. And unfortunately, there's a trade-off when you're doing this. And so we reached the point where there wasn't, it made perfect and utter sense that we now needed to trade off something in order to get a better outcome, because the congestion and the crisis we're currently experiencing, when we have 52 ships off anchorage and not able to get into the South Africa, and we consider ourselves the gateway of Africa, and the doors closed, it was sort of that rationale. So I think it was building up over a period. And now we need to change. The big push that we have at the moment and through this crisis is going, guys, we have to reorientate the way we do things, because if we don't, we're going to continue just getting more congestion, increased cost in cargo. And if I can just highlight a point that I think is very important, is that currently on FMCG, roughly 50% of your cost of that item is made up in transport, whether it's raw materials to get to the factory, whether it's the packaging for the label, the packaging for the container, or the box it goes in, or the cellophane wrap that gets wrapped around it at the end, then to the warehouse or distribution center, then to the warehouse, then to the retail outlets, and then finally into the consumer's hand. This makes up roughly 50% of the costs. Already our supply chain costs are very high in comparison to world standards. If we can become more efficient in this space and let's say reduce our cost by 10%, that would lead to a 5% deflation on items. Deflation in South Africa. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All we have to do
So,
is do things better. And so this is my big, and you asked why before we were online about the passion, because it makes such a big difference. If we get this right, we don't have a discussion about a VAT increase to 15% like we did in the beginning of the year. Guys, we got deflation. All of a sudden, we do things more effectively and efficiently. There is no losers. The environment is happier because we're not having fumes spewing out of trucks sitting in a line. We have lower cost on product. It's a win, 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 win. And that's what I'm really advocating is, guys, we really need to get behind it. A bit like we all got behind the World Cup. When we were hosting that. It was
yes.
amazing. Everyone was buzzing and ready. We had a common sense of purpose. And I'm hoping in this supply chain revolution, we can have a bit of a common sense of purpose instead of, hey, how much more can I get?
100%. So obviously, with regards to ESG, which is also a buzzword at the moment, it is going to reduce the standing time, reduce congestion, reduce all of those problems that all transporters are facing at the moment. And cost being the main factor, because as you mentioned, to every business, it is a business. So your main purpose is to get income. Have you guys looked at a costing structure?
Of course. No, so what we're doing is we're already offering the services, and we have some clientele who are currently taking us up on it. And so you have to have full costing structure as well as full selling structure. Like so costs are our internal costs, but what do we need to market or sell the service at in order to stay sustainable? So done that. We're also now modeling the whole corridor because at the moment we're all focused on Cato Ridge / the Durban port. However, Cato Ridge is only there to enable the more free flow of the Durban port. It's basically getting the port to be a fly half. If we use an analogy, catch pass, catch pass, catch pass. As soon as you start spending time doing more stuff like that in the port, he can't catch and pass more containers because now he's looking at the ball for a while and then he passes it. If we can get the port working like the best examples in the world do in moving the containers out through it quickly, you'll get a lot better outcome.
Warwick, what are the workflow steps for a transporter or a trucking company that needs to go pick up cargo, take it through to rail, through Cato Ridge, for example, and get it delivered to the port? How do you think should a software system start to adapt or change to be able to be ready for the rail environment?
Okay, good question. So at the moment, there's a lot of work going into it, and I've had a look at a lot of the dashboards that are now being created to start modeling data, start modeling cargo flows, and specifically the real-time modeling of cargo flows by actually having the tracking devices coming into the sort of model. That allows us then to firstly identify where the issues are currently and in real time start working around it. So from a macro perspective, we can start getting flows working better. And then if you take that down to the individual truck owner, if he can then have access to those, he can reroute trucks depending on where he can avoid. I'll use another example that we're quite excited about is what we are hoping to do, and this is still a little bit of a long way away, is tying to some of the public sector cameras and data sets, which means that we can now know where a truck is that is coming to visit us because we know the truck number, registration number, we know the container number on the back. And if we can say, let's say he's snapped on the camera at Harry Smith on Sanrail's camera, we then know from Harry Smith to Cato Ridge, it takes a truck roughly 3 to 3.5 hours. And we know that we've got a slot available for 3.5 hours. We could maybe communicate to him and say, take your time, don't push it, conserve fuel. If you get here in 3.5 hours, you'll be able to drive straight into the terminal. If you get in 3 hours, you've got a waiting time, so you'd report to the truck staging area anyway, but then you'd be held there for half an hour. You then give the driver or the truck owner the ability then to decide, whether he wants to maybe accelerate a little bit, get there an hour earlier because he wants to do some washing, for lack of a better word, but it gives him the ability to have knowledgeable intel in order to base his decisions on.
Would you possibly be able to elaborate a little bit on the booking solution, on how booking slots are going to be working at the inland port?
So at the moment, thankfully, we don't have enough volume to worry about that. However, so it becomes very easy. However, in time, and I think one of the issues that we'd like to get right is to understand exactly how many trucks, containers, and trains we can handle with the equipment we have, so that when we do put out slots or bookings, we are putting it out on a basis that we know. So if there's, let's say, 10 slots in this hour, we can fulfill those 10 slots. Not we putting out 10, yet we can only do 8. So there needs to be a very accurate and realistic view of what you can and can't do. And sometimes you might have a breakdown, and whereas normally you say run 10 slots or 100 slots an hour, right, guys, for the next 3 hours, it's 50 slots. Why? Because one of the reach stackers is down, and therefore we can't process more. And so there's a constant feedback loop. We must understand that supply chain is a system. And it's almost it's a chain, and it's only as strong as its weakest link. And so what we have to do is focus on all of those various parts to get the best outcome. And unfortunately, it is a supply chain, so all you need is one dodgy link in order to have bad outcomes. And so that is the way we look to hopefully address that.
And yeah, how will you prevent the same bottlenecks that's happening at the ports right now? How will you prevent the same bottlenecks at Cato Ridge, Warwick?
So I think we must understand why Durban Port has had the issues that it has, the congestion issues that it has, and it's not rocket science. It's happened at many examples over the years. I'll give you an example. The Durban Port, if you were only road based, international best practice says you should have 7 entrance roads. 7.
Yeah.
We have 1, and the second one has just been completed. So we can never evacuate the port with the current setup that we have until we change our system. So Cato Ridge is then part of the rejigged Durban port system, which means that we are now creating, let's say, the people rushing out of the room in the fire. We are now creating Cato Ridge as one of those doors. Durban Port is one of those doors. We're hoping Dubai, as well as the old airport, become another door on the north and south access, so that clients coming from the south, let's say, or the automotive clients, don't also come into the CBD, don't go into Durban Port and have the congestion. They rather stop at the old airport. Obviously, this takes time to build out and develop, and then they return. So when you get the systematic nature, what we're discussing, right, is you're taking a burden of 100% on one doorway, and you're now taking that 100 and putting it over 4 doorways, which means that you then have 25%, which is a lot easier to handle in whichever way, shape, or form. That structural discussion I just had with you, but then also I have designed, I spoke about an interchange earlier, I spoke about the new rail terminal. We are designing specifically for the increased volumes and not designing it for when the first container came off the boat and the first truck went and fetched it. And so that's how we would look to do it. Also designing very specifically for truck staging and holding areas. At the moment, that isn't as prevalent in Durban Port as it should be, because what we believe is that if all the congestion creating activities can go to its various areas that it should be, and it can be released in a coordinated fashion, you then don't have the congestion at the center.
Warwick, if there's anything else, do you want to add anything? Tell South Africa anything about this road to rail situation in closing?
Thank you. I believe that we all need to get behind an improved supply chain. We're on the southern tip of Africa, which is 1,000,000 miles away from the Americas and China, etc. And if we are scoring own goals by having our supply chain being as ineffective and costly as it is, we are not doing ourselves any favor, both as a macro SA Inc. level, but also the individual companies on the ground. And so my real encouragement is to get behind the change that is happening, see if you can be part of the conversation in order to, because the more voices in this conversation, the more rich the ultimate outcome is, and the more we can actually address the concerns that are being raised. And so to me, it's time to roll up our sleeves. We've had bad outcomes for long enough. And also, don't just think about your pure company's outcome, but have a wider lens in order to see how that affects others. And the example I use is, let's say I'm in the waste business and I collect waste from a company and I go pour it into a river. I get all of the money from the revenue. I get a little bit of transport cost to take it to the river, and I've got no cost of disposing it. So I make fantastic amounts of money as me as a company. However, the societal costs and the cost that the rest of the country have to bear for that is huge, and it's way more than the benefit that you've taken. And so my real appeal is to stop being so individualistic centric, and rather be part of the greater whole. Because I believe that if we're all individually centric and looking after our own interests, we get the outcomes we currently have. We need to start coordinating and collaborating to a much better level and a much higher degree in order to get reduced friction in the supply chain, which leads to better outcomes, better costs, and just faster delivery of goods. And so my real appeal to your listeners is, guys, it's time to roll up your sleeves. SA Inc. needs this, and I don't want to leave this country in a worse position than I found it in. And at the moment, it seems like our supply chain has just been going down as opposed to being improving. So it's now upon all of us to leave a legacy that isn't a burning bridge and is rather something that is fit for purpose and able to take us forward.
So, Warwick, if our listeners want to get involved and want to get their hands in the pie, how do they get involved? What would you expect them to do?
So this is where I put my MIPA hat on in Total, Multimodal Inland Port Association, and say that the first step is to start arming yourself with knowledge and understanding, and you don't get to go play soccer until you know the rules. So get in, understand, and maybe a paddle is the right example, because paddle is a relatively new game.
Yes.
You didn't
Yeah.
just walk onto the court. You had to find out how it works. Can it bounce off the glass and not, etc. And so my suggestion is, guys, do your homework, get stuck in. There's a lot of literature. I know podcasts like yours, as well as the publications, are spending a lot of time on it. If you have a look at the news article on Monday, came out with Traction spending 3.4 billion.
we saw
It is
that.
very
We
topical.
sent
It's
it to
very
each
knowledgeable.
other. We were like, wow.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike sent it to
100%.
me originally, so we got very excited about
Oh, yeah. Mike from Rail Runners sent it to
Yes.
her. Yeah.
And he's a MIPA member, and he's trying to push wonderful technology. And so this is it, guys: is roll up your sleeves. I would encourage you to become a MIPA member as a great start. It's not very expensive, and I do believe you at least touching a lot of aspects, because as an inland port, we have to have full knowledge of the road, full knowledge of the rail, full knowledge of container working. And so from a big picture or holistic view, we're not just a trucking company. We're not just a train operating company. We're not just a port operating company, if that makes sense, or association. It's wider. So roll up your sleeves and then see how this changing environment affects your business and how you can potentially plug that gap or see the opportunities, and then test it. When I say test it vocally or verbally, sort of with MIPA members, etc., what we're finding is the conversations at the moment are so rich, because there's so much change, and we see this change from different lenses and see different opportunities. That if and I had a transporter and someone from Harry Smith yesterday having exactly this discussion, saying, I've got a bonded warehouse opportunity here. How do we then exercise this into a meaningful development? And we had half an hour to 45-minute discussion about, this is what I did my side, this is what you can do, and start getting into these conversations, because we are richer together in thought process and in ability than we are individually on our own. And unfortunately, the old mindset of business, specifically in this country, is let's keep all our secrets to ourselves, let's keep all our data to ourselves, and we will be great and everyone else will be not as great. That has got us to where we are now. Let's try something different. The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Let's do something different to get a different
I
result.
think it's very important for companies out there to learn to be not competitors, but co-competitors, rather, to try and work together rather than compete.
So just to highlight that, because it's an important word that you just said, we call it coopetition. And what you have to do, and if you think about the way, let's say, a car sales place does it, you'll notice that when you're going to buy a car, you go to an area and all the dealerships tend to be in the same place, that you can have a look at all the
Yeah.
car dealerships. And the rationale behind that is, yes, sure, we're competing with the guy next to us, but at least everyone is coming to this area to buy a car,
Correct.
as opposed to me being off 20 kilometers away from them. Then you have to make a trip all the way out to me specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, guys, let's be together. Let's give the clients choices, and that way we can pay for the joint infrastructure together. Like, say you don't have a road into there. Well, guys, all 10 of us can agree to build this road in here. Then we have better outcomes. Our clients can come to us now, and then we're going to compete. But there needs to be this level of understanding. And guys, we do this. We wear different hats. We wear my CEO hat, I wear my father hat, I wear my husband hat. You should be able to do this in your business environment as well. Know where you need to compete and know where you need to collaborate. And that's an important point you just raised.
Let's be like the car dealerships and like the Bokke and work together. That's the message.
The
Thank you
book is a
so
great
much.
example.
Together.
Thank you so much, Warwick. I think it was an insightful session and I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you. I hope you have a great day and a great
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Goodbye to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
week. Bye bye.